Okay, so we've seen how to create a list with different items stored within it. Now let's see how we can go about accessing the different elements of a list. Now this can be done by using what is known as list indexing and takes a very similar approach to what we observed with string indexing. So to access elements, we can use the square bracket syntax and then place the index number inside the square brackets. Now one critical thing to note here, just like we saw with strings, is that indexing starts at 0. So if we take our shopping list that we created, which has 5 items, the indexing goes from 0 to 4. So the first element in this list, i.e. apples, would have index 0, and the 5th element in this list, i.e. lettuce, would have the index number 4. So if we wanted to access the first element in this list, we would need to observe the value at index 0. So shopping underscore list is our list object. We can then place a set of square brackets and then place the index 0 inside. When we run this, it brings back the result apples. Now if we were to try and access an index which does not exist, i.e. if we were to try and access index 7 for example, you can see we get an index error telling us that the list index that we are trying to find is out of range. In other words, it doesn't exist. Now another type of error we may come across is if we try to index using something other than an integer. For example, if we try to access an index using floats, we will get a type error telling us that list indices must be integers or slices, not float. So note that you can only use whole numbers. Now we know that a list contains elements, of which one may be another list. Now this is a nested list, and if we wanted to get hold of items in a nested list, how would we go about doing this? Well, it follows a very similar idea. So let's take the following example. If we create a variable called position, and we set this equal to a list of integers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then have a list which then contains the values 6, 7, 8, and 9, how would we return the value 7 in this example? Well, let's take it step by step. Let's first grab hold of the nested list. Now, if we count along the index, we can see that the list is at index 5. So we can first type position, which is our initial list object, and then inside square brackets, we can place index 5. When we run this code, we get a list returned, and to prove this, we can place this code in the type built-in function, and we can see that it's a list. Now, how do we index a list? Well, we use square brackets. So we can add another set of square brackets and chain another indexing operation to the end. So after position square brackets 5, we can put square brackets 1, as we can see that the number 7 is at index position 1 of the nested list. And the same logic would apply if there was another nested list within this list. The pattern continues. Now we can also access items from a list using what is known as negative indexing, and we also saw this within the strings section. The index -1 refers to the last item, and index -2 would relate to the second from last item, and so on. So how would we obtain the value 8 using negative indexing? Pause the video and give it a go. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too much trouble. We would start by putting the list object we want to search in. That would be the variable position. We can then access the nested list by using -1 and placing this in square brackets, as it's the last item in the main list. We can then place another set of square brackets after our first set, and we can use -2 in the second set, as 8 is the second item from the end of the nested list. So a very similar operation to string indexing. Remember, indexing starts at 0 and we use square brackets after the list object to extract a specific value.